The picture of actors on their ad for casting.com, acting casting site, they used AI to generate these models. I know it sounds as ridiculous as it is. The giveaway was the fingernails were screwed up. There wasn't 6 fingers, but it was like morphed and like it was like morphed in like a bad Zoom call. Hey guys, welcome to the Actor's Guide to the End of the World podcast, where we talk about acting in Hollywood in a way people understand. I'm Econ Song, and this is
Rian Kelly. How you doing?
What's up, buddy? Follow us wherever you find your podcast at Actor's Guide Podcast. We have video on Substack and YouTube. Make sure you follow us on all social media at Actor's Guide Podcast. Leave a review, leave a comment. Greatly appreciate it. So on the show for today, I tell a story about how I called Congress. I was doing my part as a concerned citizen. I don't like to brag, but I am an American hero. To give a little context, there was a reconciliation bill that was being pushed up, and in it had AI regulations being banned for 10 years. So we get into all of that. We also talk about the SAG commercial contract that is up for vote right now. We're going to talk about all the major gains that they achieved and everything you need to know. We also get into an honest conversation about union, FICOR, non-union, and why it's so polarizing. And why are there so many non-union commercials?
And we talk about staying in the game long enough without feeling like you're waiting for your big break.
That's our show. Sit back and relax. However, and wherever you're listening to us, thank you for making us part of your day.
Now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Is craft services the only time you eat a decent meal?
Do you feel a little ashamed walking off set with fistfuls of brisket?
Meet Crafty Bag, the stylish and environmentally conscious way to steal food from set.
There are no limits with Crafty Bag. You can go from fig Newtons to filet mignon.
Now comes in green screen. Crafty Bag is not waterproof. Spillage may occur.
We have a lot going on. We're going to jump around today. One thing I want to tell you, I happened to call Congress this week. It was actually yesterday. I called Congress. I'm going to tell you all about it.
Just to say great job, or?
Actually, I should probably give a little context. There was a crazy mega bill. Literally, that's the words that they used. There was a mega bill. Congress was pushing it up and trying to get it passed. It's specifically about the budget. It just so happened that they threw in a clause saying that it is not allowed to put AI regulations on anything, actors, likenesses, all that stuff, for 10 years. Okay. So this is kind of like the point where, this is not, we're obviously we got into a little political stuff last week, but we're talking about stuff that's relating to actors. If you're listening to this, it's something that actors probably should know. I had no idea. Someone tagged me on this jargon, and I was like, what is this? Okay, it was so not on my radar.
Hang on a minute.
It's so bonkers. Yeah, go ahead.
How can they even do that? How can you, especially... No, I'm just going to, that's bonkers to me. Especially, I thought there was a kind of a thing among Republicans where they don't want to interfere with state laws. And, federal's bad, state is good. And I don't know. Anyway, that seems nuts.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a great point. I don't know. But a lot of things don't really make sense these days. This bill, we can safely say that big tech is throwing a lot of money. I mean, it's not a surprise.
Yeah.
How much they're concerned about us as actors, probably not that much. A lot of actors were passing it around. I saw enough videos, and I was like, you know what? Honestly, let me call Congress.
So when you say call Congress, how does that work? So you go, I'm going to call Congress. Is that I'm going to call my local congressperson? Is that do you just call up and go, put the nearest person on the phone? I want to yell at them.
That's a great question. I know as little as you do. It just so happened that one of these videos literally put the number for Congress in her video.
Oh, there you go.
And she's great. I'll give her a shout out. I want to say her handle is Patriotic Lady. Blonde, very articulate. She's on all the platforms. She's actually pretty huge. So she literally put the number of Congress on there. Can't make it any harder than that, any easier than that. I literally called Congress. A person picks up in 5 seconds. It was like I was calling my local library. I was so thrown off because I was expecting an automated message. I was expecting the voicemail to be full. I was literally looking for an out saying, hey, I tried. And then next thing you know, I'm like, oh, hi, I literally said, is this the line for Congress? This is how out of my element I was. I would have thought like you that I was calling a state representative or whatever. She got my zip code. She transferred me over to another person. Super casual, super chill, not crazy. Uh, Thankfully, I was kind of articulate to say, oh, so what's your concern? And I was like, oh, this reconciliation bill and so on. Oh, do you have anything you wanted to add to the note? I was like, well, there's a part in it that's about AI and AI regulations. I'm in entertainment and it's something I deeply care about. And I think this is troubling that there are no regulations and, hypothetically for 10 years for all the state bills that have been passed, this will get us into tricky territory. Anyway, I didn't have anything written down. I wasn't expecting to talk to a normal person.
Yeah.
Or talk to a person. She got down my name. She was like, do you want them to respond to you? I was like, oh, no, I'm okay. Just let them know I'm concerned about this. The kicker of all this, I tell my friends who are sending me these things, I was like, I called Congress. I feel pretty good about myself, right? It just so happened, literally the day after. Actually, it was actually that afternoon. That bill was shot down. It was denied. It was voted down. I would love to say that it was because of me.
It definitely was.
It was not because of me.
It definitely was. So we got, guys, I know y'all like this bill. I know you really got excited about it, but a guy called us and he doesn't like it. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
I took notes.
Exactly.
Here they are. So sorry, guys.
Yep.
Anything that forbids restrictions on something for 10 years seems ludicrous to me. For 10 years, especially like with how fast technology moves. That's bananas.
Yeah. AI in the next 10 years is everything. That's what everyone's saying. It's like, this is the 10 years for AI.
Yeah. Don't put any restrictions on it. Crazy. I mean, that is the very definition of special interest. Like somebody's gone, no restrictions for 10 years. Can't take it back. Nuts. I tend to land on the side of optimism and go, I think, it's going to be okay. I sort of believe that like people will never fully accept AI as, that humans can't be replaced by AI. But I do know that like there are massive chunks of this industry and there are jobs that are going to be, eliminated because of AI. But I still think that ultimately we'll be all right. I don't know why. I'm just there. It's just, if I'm going to lie to myself, I'm going to tell myself the most helpful lie that I can, where I'm like, you know what? It's going to be okay. Because the alternative is like going around, thinking the world's about to end.
Ignorance is bliss in a way. We will get into AI a little bit when we talk about the SAG contract, which is a step in the right direction. They got more AI protections.
Commercials is a big area for AI as well, because, you're talking about background actors, talking about set design.
We'll save it for another podcast. There is so much that is going on. There are a lot of bills being pushed and being passed right now. So besides this scary reconciliation bill, there's a lot of progress that is being made. California is involved in a lot of it. Tennessee and the music industry in Tennessee doing huge things, protecting musicians, protecting artists. So we'll definitely get into that another time. Actually, one thing I wanted to throw out there, speaking of commercials, we're going to talk about the commercial contract. I just saw this online. Casting.com, which is one of the most, it's one of our casting sites. You put up a headshot. I mean, to be honest, I don't even think I'm on it. It's one of those smaller ones who's just trying to get money from actors. I saw this Instagram post. Someone was calling them out. Their ad, a picture of actors on their website. Supposedly, it was created by AI.
Wait, say that again? Which?
The picture of actors on their ad for casting.com, the acting casting site, they used AI to generate these models. I know, it sounds as ridiculous as it is. We'll put a link to that post in the description, but this is what we have to deal with. They're advertising to actors, hoping to make money off of actors, getting money off of actors, and they have the indecency to use an ad generated by AI and not real people. The giveaway was the fingernails were screwed up. There wasn't 6 fingers, but it was like morphed and like it was like morphed in like a bad Zoom call when you got like messed up fingers or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now.
I also think it's hilarious that AI can't handle fingers. Like, still can't handle fingers. And it's like, it's such a dead giveaway. I saw a trailer for a movie that was all AI generated that popped up on Instagram. People were like, oh, this is great. But I don't know, there's something weird about it. It's something just eerie and off. I've seen a lot of AI misunderstanding context, which is a hard thing for, a computer to recognize. I think somebody posted a picture of a Google search that said, is Marlon Brando in Heat? And AI had gone into a description of how heat was related to animals when they were reproducing and, when they were fertile. And it went on. And so as a deceased human being, it would not apply to Marlon Brando that he would be in heat. So, like, it's that thing of, like, you can have all the access to all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't understand context or nuance, what's the point? I don't know. I still don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's going to replace the industry.
If you haven't heard, we did an episode on AI. It was talking about Ben Affleck. There was a big interview that he did, and he had some really articulate comments. I still think it holds up. I think for a lot of creatives, AI is not going to replace it. It's going to be a tool that we're probably not going to be able to escape. That being said, going to this commercial contract, fighting to put a line in the sand of what's not right. So let's talk about this commercial contract. We did an episode when I went to one of the first meetings. It was called W&W's. That's short for wages and working conditions. You put in motions, you raise your hand, you go up to the mic, and you say, this has happened at an audition. I put in a motion to do A, B, or C. To hear the conversations of what happens and then what they eventually push through, they have this huge document. They push it to the negotiating board. The negotiating board did it all through March, I believe. They avoided a strike, got this contract. They sent it to the board. The board approved it. They're sending it to us members to vote on. Before we get into some of the nuts and bolts, if you're non-union, a lot of this stuff applies to you. I mean, first of all, everyone kind of auditions for commercials because they're easier to get involved in, easier to see new talent. They pay often a lot better than TV. Even if you're in another country or you're in another region, it's kind of helpful to say, hey, this is how much we get paid for a commercial that is streaming on Netflix. And then in another country, an actor could say, well, this is how much we get paid. Wow.
Spoiler alert, it's always lower than America.
Yeah. I was trying to be a diplomatic way of saying that, but yeah. So there was a huge concern about, obviously, if you have a national commercial that's on TV, on what they call linear TV. That's an actual TV set, ABC, NBC. I know. Who actually watches that, right? Those commercials are becoming fewer and more rare. What about all these bajillion commercials that are on Netflix, that are on YouTube, that are on Amazon, that are on Freevee, that are on Fubu, on Pluto, whatever?
On Zazzle, on Flob, on Frunch.
Yeah, exactly. Those sounded very Dutch.
Foodle.
So we made a huge gain. And I a lot of this is a shout out to the negotiating board because they worked their ass off and they avoided a strike to this point. We don't know if this contract is getting voted in. You have this week to vote it in, yes or no. Anyway, so the rates for streaming jumped up. A streaming platform, $10,000 for a year. That's a lot more than it used to be.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way you get paid on linear TV or terrestrial TV is like you do cycles of when it's shown on these. Do you get paid per showing, or is it just being showed? Okay.
Yeah. It's essentially per cycle, usually 13 weeks. Like if you get a national commercial on, say, network, it's kind of amazing. They literally will show you the program that it was airing on. That's how specific it was. you would know. It's like, hey, Good Morning America. It played during there, and then it's playing on ESPN. NBA playoffs. Meanwhile, for streaming, they have all the data in the world, and we still aren't getting paid per use.
It's funny because I just saw a commercial. I was watching SNL on Peacock with a pal of mine. It showed an ad that was for a pharmaceutical company. One of the big pharmaceutical companies. I won't name them, but to give them any more free publicity. But the ad showed 3 times in a row. I know because I know the actor in it, and I know for a fact that that was shot in Ireland. Because I know the actor in the ad, and he had posted something about it when he did it. He goes, "Oh, my first US ad." 3 times in a row this ad showed. I guarantee you he didn't get anything like the money he would have gotten paid in America for that commercial. But it's obviously non-union because it's being shot in Ireland. It's obviously, and a lot of those, I used to see it in voiceover as well. Like a lot of the pharmaceutical commercials are non-union. Yeah, so it's interesting that a commercial will be shown on a streaming service here that is only an American streaming service. I mean, Peacock doesn't exist because it's NBC. It doesn't exist outside of the US. But the ad would have been shot in Ireland, paid in Ireland, and aired here.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that because, last week we talked about productions going overseas. Commercials is literally right now facing that same problem. So remind me, so you did work a commercial in Mexico City.
I filmed a
commercial. What year was that?
Oh, 2022 maybe?
Oh, okay. So that was recent. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, that's probably around the time where it was popping up. So back to this, when streaming was really starting to hit and you see a internet commercial run 5 bajillion times, you think that the actor's getting a lot of money. They're not. A lot of those commercials, if you see it streaming on YouTube or Hulu or whatever, a lot of them were non-union. And either way, they were buyouts. Now, buyouts is very different than, say, what we were saying, getting paid per use. Buyouts is you get paid for a chunk of time, usually a year. They might throw you as little as $300. They might throw you as much as $500. They might throw you $5,000. The thing is those are still not SAG rates that we're talking about right now. So this is just helpful to know. This is not a judgment on non-union actors. This is just one of many, many things where non-union actors can realize, hey, this is what we believe is worth being streamed a bunch of times for a year. And you make that choice and you say, well, I need the money and I'll do it for $500. And then we get into this tricky territory of strengthening our union and trying to get more commercials to pay a standard wage. The other thing that was brand new in this is this prevalence of YouTube TV. YouTube TV is essentially like buying cable. So before this contract, YouTube TV ads were still considered YouTube. Cheapest, digital, pay for a small amount, run it a bunch of times. You see all these little loopholes? My mind was blown when I was listening to the WWs of all these actors, very educated, very up with it. I'm like, wow, I was blown away. I was like, all these little things that they're trying to get around. Anyway, YouTube TV is its own entity. It's its own category, and the rates are higher. Like I said, streaming rates are higher. $10,000 for a year. It's a lot better than before. Is it as good as what we want? No, of course not. We didn't even want a buyout. We wanted Netflix to be like, hey, Netflix, you're bigger than Peacock, or you're bigger than a lot of NBC, ABC linear channels, and there's still a buyout. But this is what we have to deal with, and each contract is a step in the right direction. By the way, it's also acknowledged that YouTube has more reach than anyone. Right now, YouTube officially has more reach than anyone.
Wow.
AI was a step up as far as the strongest regulations that we have currently. The real danger is digital replicas, the digital copy of all the actors. They were being used in perpetuity. Basically means they were being used forever. If you're a non-union actor, you got to read your contracts. You might not have an agent. You might not have anyone watching out for you. This is kind of like the thing where you should probably watch out, because we're all fighting for the same thing. And I think what I'm getting at is these contracts is kind of like a blueprint for what we hope everyone else's contract will be. You work a non-union commercial. You're going to say, okay, we'll pay you $800. We'll use it for the entire year. We have control of all your likenesses. We will get consent for digital replica, and we will own it in perpetuity. Now, that right there is a red flag, but it exists. And what it means is they will own your digital replica forever.
Insane.
They tried to do that to us. They tried to do that to everyone. By the way, digital replica use. If you did a previous contract and you signed digital replica use in perpetuity, this contract will nullify that old contract.
Okay.
This contract right here.
That's
So
great.
it's one little step protecting, hey, that's not cool. And even if you signed it from before, we're getting rid of it. It's just one thing that a non-union actor has to watch out for.
There's also a weird gray area with this where, and I've seen this, and my agent will usually flag it, where on some things there's a social media in perpetuity, like a natural, it'll be a sort of a natural in perpetuity clause. And like anything that's ever, and it's not too many things, but my agent has always flagged it and gone, just so you know, this is something we weren't able to get taken off this because of the nature of social media and the sort of permanence of it, that they don't want to pay for, if it's on a social media side of a company like an Instagram or whatever, they don't want to have to pay for that to leave that up there. So that's a weird sort of gray area of in perpetuity where they're not using it for profit, but it still lives in the kind of, lives in the ether of the internet. It just seems ludicrous to me. Generally, and this is the thing we'll say, like for people who aren't familiar, non-union jobs are lower paid by and large. I mean, pretty much universally than union jobs. And that's part of the reason that a lot of them exist, because companies are able to pay less money to people for these things. I noticed after joining the union a few years ago, the amount of commercial auditions I had dropped pretty dramatically because a lot of commercials are non-union, and also voiceover.
A lot of people who are critical of our union for good reason, because it's not a great situation, says we've gotten to this point where we've lost so much control and so many ads went non-union, and we're trying to recover. I've always been a little more open because everyone starts out non-union. It's like, this can't be a us and them situation. Part of these negotiations were, how do we fight for what we need and not push these brands and these clients and these agencies away from dealing with union actors? That's the conversation. By the way, I want to add this for all the people paying attention who thought maybe we would get 24 hours turnaround for commercial auditions. You probably have seen this, right? A lot of times we get last minute commercial auditions. That absolutely was not pushed.
Okay.
And I can say this now because it's so after the fact of outside the meetings. I heard the conversations of why they didn't ask for a 24-hour turnaround. And going into it, because we got that for, I think we got 20, did we get 24 hours? We got 48 hours for TV and film, I think.
48 for TV and film, yeah.
Yeah, 48. I kind of assumed we were going to get 24 hours for commercials.
Yeah.
And I heard the conversations, and so many people said, guys, I work in casting. I realize so many things and so many roles are so last minute. To ask for 24 hours is unrealistic, and it gives these brands and agencies another reason to go non-union.
Jesus.
And it was exactly right.
I always aspired to be a union member. I didn't, I don't know many actors who are like, oh my God, I love non-union. I'm going to stay non-union forever. I don't think that's the goal, because it's better conditions, better pay, better protections. This is a lot of kind of regulation-y stuff, or a lot of technical stuff, but there's a thing, you can be what's called FI-core or financial core in the union, which is basically you petitioning the union saying to them, I can't make enough money from union work right now. I need to be able to take non-union jobs. You still pay union dues, but you can't vote.
Yeah, you can't vote. You don't get screeners. You lose some privileges. You can't vote on the contract. Yeah.
It's obviously, and the union itself frowns upon people doing this. It's not illegal, but like they will, they'll permit people to do it, but it's not well thought of by them. But I've heard from some casting directors that there are a lot of actors that are FI-core that you would never expect. that a lot of people do this because it allows them to take both union and non-union jobs.
Let's talk about that real quick. I don't want to get into a lot of the nitty gritty because it can get really, really polarizing. I know a lot of people who said FICOR and even the fact that SAG-Aftra is not fighting non-union more is the reason why we're in this mess. FICOR existing is part of the issue. Now, I'm trying to not make it us versus them, but people have said that to me. A client has no issues saying, I can get great actors and avoid union restrictions, and whether they're going to scab or I can find some FICOR actors. I was a non-union actor, like everyone else. I worked non-union commercials. I remember when you said, Econ, there's this audition that you can go out to. It's a commercial. It pays $500. And boy, you would have thought I was Richie Rich. That you're going to tell me I make $500? Man, this is way better than working at Urban Outfitters. This is what I'm talking about, right? This is the tricky territory. And I feel different than I did 5 years ago, right? I feel a lot more pro-union than 5 years ago. So you got to admit that I'm a little biased. But I realize that everyone's thinking about their pocketbook and it goes beyond how much you're getting paid. It's about supporting the union, and I'm not going to weaken the union by doing A, B, or C.
Yeah, and I think that's commendable, and I think it's I have a slightly different take on it too. And I grew up very pro-union. I mean, I've always been in unions, and I grew up in a country that's that was built on labor unions and a lot of it, and the labor movement. So I've always been very pro-union. I've seen the drawbacks of unions. I've seen the downside of it, but I am overwhelmingly in favor of unions. The FICOR thing, I try not to have a judgment on it because I understand that everybody's situation is different. You and I are not looking after a family. You know what I mean? I'm not raising a family. I don't have to think about that. So it's easy for me to get on my high horse and go, God, that weakens union, whatever. And yeah, in a way it does. It's part of the reason that companies sort of get away with non-union commercials. But to some degree, I know you said it's not about the money. To some degree it is though, because I think that when you look at the stats of what are the stats again? I forget, but it's trotted out every so often that of all the SAG-Aftra members in the US, the percentage of them working at any given time is minuscule. It's like, would it be 15? Would it even be that high? I can't remember. It's something very low. It's a stat I've heard a number of times. I just know that it's hard to make a living solely as an actor right now for a lot of people. And that includes a lot of union members. And if you're a union member, that means you're in the sort of top tier of the industry in this country. It means that you've done enough union work to qualify you for union membership. So if someone needs to go FICOR to live and to continue to do this, it's not helpful for me to have a judgment on that because I don't know their situation. I know that it's hard to make a living. So it's a real tricky one because I see exactly what you're saying. And a part of me does feel the same way. But then again, you know what I mean? It is hard to make a living at this in this profession. And as we've seen,
I am really curious because, a lot of people don't tell other people of their FICOR. A lot of people don't talk about FICOR.
Sure.
Some people call it LICOR.
Oh, I'd never heard that.
That they're actually just members who are just working off the clock and working non-union. If you're a FICOR actor, and let's say that you have kids, you have bills to pay, are you really making that much more money? I know you're making more money. I think the question that I'm asking is, what is the end game? I know that I don't want to generalize. I think a lot of actors who do non-union, it's because they want to feel busy. It's not just about the money. It's that they want to feel busy that they're doing something.
I don't know. I kind of disagree with that just because there's a couple of things I'll say on that. One, I don't think it's an easy decision to go FICOR. I think it is literally rooted in, for most people, I would say, a need. Like, I am not making enough money on this. The second thing I'll say on that is like, it depends on what market you're in. Some markets have a lot more non-union commercials than union commercials. You may not have access to the same volume of union commercial auditions that you do in New York or LA if you're in another market. So I don't think...
Oh, that's true. Well, I don't know if Atlanta's right to work, right?
Atlanta's right to work, but Chicago's not right to work. And I think there are a lot less union commercials in
Oh,
Chicago than there are non-union commercials. And I think
that's
it
true. And
depends
Chicago's
on,
a very pro-union town.
yeah, exactly. You may not make enough money from acting for a while. You know what I mean? It may not be for your whole career, but there may be a period in your career where you're just not making ends meet. I also talked to a casting director about this one time, and they told me that no one cares except actors. Casting directors don't care. Like, no one else cares except the stigma is primarily among actors against this thing, which makes sense.
That's understandable that actors care more.
And this may be a terrible parallel, but when people are blaming the actors who go FICOR for the fact that a lot of jobs are non-union, particularly commercial jobs, it's kind of the same to me as saying that the cost of groceries is high because people shoplift, where it's not really about that. Decisions are made on a much more corporate level.
Wait, hold on. I'm wrapping my head around that.
A few years ago in Ireland, there was a real strong campaign where one of our former prime minister, there was a hotline you could call to catch people who are cheating on social welfare. The implication being that the reason this country is in such terrible state is because people are cheating the system and they're stealing from you. Whereas in actual fact, the reason the country was in shambles was done at a corporate level. And it was corporate greed that bankrupted Ireland, that contributed to the crash. The idea that it's the guy next to you that's the problem, that it's the people on welfare the problem. Like, I think it distracts from the fact that nobody's really holding big corporations to account who are making non-union commercials. So to blame the actor who's going FICOR because they can't afford to live on union wages, I think it's probably looking in the wrong direction.
I totally get what you're saying. I think it's a multifaceted problem, and I think FICOR is one aspect that does not help the situation. And also a lot of this problem is not holding corporations accountable, because every so often you'll see on Cruise Stories or whatever, you'll be like, hey, so-and-so, Pepsi just, or I don't want to say a brand, but so-and-so just did a Super Bowl ad that was completely non-union. So we do hear those things, but it doesn't get amplified to a degree where people really understand why we care so much. I feel like there's a lot going on versus FICOR is the enemy. If FICOR was not an option, that might help the situation.
Sure, it might.
I mean, that's what that theory is just posing. You know what I mean?
Again, I'm saying this as someone who's very pro-union and always has been. I've always been pro-union. And I'm saying that, like, it's tragic that FICOR even has to exist, that it is even
Yeah, that's true.
Because
That's
in an ideal world, all of these things would be union jobs and all of them would be well paid and people would be able to make a living wage as an actor. And that's obviously the goal. It's interesting to talk about this stuff because, again, for me, just personally, it's not good for me to have too much judgment on why somebody does something, because I don't know their situation. I don't know their life.
Completely right, and I think that's a great way to look at it. It reminds me of when we were talking about Honora and we were talking about Sean Baker, and there was a lot of talk and this idea of what happened behind the scenes, that possibly he was not as pro-union as you would hope for a great independent director. These contracts are hopefully protecting everyone on set. These rules are hopefully protecting actors, crew members, and all that stuff. And that's it. We want everyone to be working on a set and it protected. And that's probably the what we're all aspiring to.
What's more helpful is to educate people, to bring them in. Like you said, a lot of non-union actors picketed during the strikes. And also, like, I've now had, because of the last couple of jobs I've done, which were in Ireland, which were under the jurisdiction of two different unions. One was UK Equity, one was Irish Equity. And they have different rates and they have different conditions. So I got to get some experience of contracts, from a different union that I'm not as familiar with, because most of my experience has been through SAG contracts and not through Irish union or UK Equity contracts. The only power we have is collective bargaining. Without that, it's everybody for themselves, and that's not a good scene. That's when like wages go down, conditions go down, and protections get thrown out the window. So I don't know. It's really interesting to talk about this stuff.
Let me throw this out there. I'm going to keep names out because I actually don't want to talk about specific names.
Gregory Peck.
So I worked in. That was not expecting that one.
I'll throw that name out as often as I can, just as a misdirect.
So I worked in Atlanta. A lot of LA actors actually brought up that point to me. You working in Atlanta is kind of lending your talents to other shows outside of LA and not really helping support more production in LA. I took it kind of personally at first. And I'm like, what are you getting at? I was like, I'm working a like it wasn't working non-union. They were implying that it kind of felt the same. Where I ending up was I worked on the show I worked on in Atlanta is executive produced and starred by very, very big actors.
Gregory Peck.
And my response to them was, this conversation is kind of silly because I'm not the highest on the totem pole. All these fancy stars and executive producers live in LA. They produced and starred in a show in Atlanta. I'm pretty sure I'm clean. You know what I mean?
Well, of course. I mean, I think a helpful response to that would be fuck right off, because I think the goal is to work. You know what I mean? You're working a job. You're a working actor. We saw it at the Stay in LA rally. There's a push to get production back in LA because actors like PJ and people are just working all over the world because that's where the production is. I'm a part of the problem then too if I go home to work in Ireland. You know, I just worked 2 jobs in Ireland. One of them was an American job. So I'm a part of the problem too. Ultimately, you have a responsibility to yourself in your own career. That's where your first responsibility lies. I will say though that you working in Atlanta, good for you. You're fucking working and you're going after the work. And you're doing it. You know what I mean? You're doing it at a high level and you're working on good shows. And honestly, it kind of sounds like a bit of jealousy, if I'm honest. I don't think it's coming from a place of necessarily from an egalitarian place of, well, you know, I'm protecting LA industry. LA is a place where you live, but the work is wherever the work is.
Yeah, that was good. I'm glad we talked about that.
And then I wanted to share something. This is about Alan Rickman. Like Alan Rickman's first film role was Hans Gruber in Die Hard, came at the age of 41, and that made his whole career. And his whole, you know, he'd done a play in London that went to Broadway, got him a Tony nomination. He'd done some BBC serials before that, but his career just took off at 41. And you know, the more stories I hear like that, the more I'm like, oh yeah, you just got to stay in the game. Like you just gotta, if you're enjoying it, you just got to hang in there. And it's something that Leslie says sometimes. She's like, I've heard her say to me and others, like, just promise me you won't quit, which like feels like a lot of pressure, but you know, it's nice for me to frame it in that way and go, yeah, I don't think I'm ever going to quit, no matter how it looks. You know what I mean? Not fully quit.
I like this. This is something that I feel like it is omnipresent for a lot of just in our careers. And it just so happens that this is the time where people might be thinking that. I look at it like a business. There's going to be great years. There's going to be soft years. The only thing that you know that you need to do is to survive. That's it. I don't want this to sound judgy. With the way that the industry is going right now, whether it's you, me, anyone else, if you're not kind of looking around the corner and just trying to be ready for whatever might happen, I'd be kind of worried. Unless you're already rich, then that's great. But I think that there is kind of a balance between keeping your head down and grinding and also trying to stay flexible. You can pivot all you want, just stay in the game.
Oh, it makes total sense. I think if you're going to officially retire, don't tell anyone. Just do it yourself. You don't have to go tell your reps I'm officially retired. Just do it yourself. I was talking with an actor friend about this morning, actually. He was talking about the idea of making it. And he realized some of his idea about making it was rooted in him 15 years ago when he came up with the idea, what it looked like 15 years ago. And then 3 years ago, it changed again, you know, and now it's different now. And he reframed what making it meant to him. And I really appreciated that, because I think some of the self-imposed pressure that I have comes from my idea of what making it look like when I moved to America or when I was in my 20s, or, in my 30s, or, even before I got sober. Like, my life has looked so different all along the way that it's good for me to examine these ideas every so often and go, I'll get rid of that. That's not helpful. I don't even realize that I'm hanging on to these old ideas until they're kind of challenged, and someone goes, well, why do you feel like that? And you're like, oh, it's because I came up with this idea and I've been clinging to it. Like the idea of like waiting. Waiting is a really interesting thing for me. I think it is the least helpful place I can be. It's the least helpful state, is waiting for anything. I don't like to ever feel like I'm waiting. Whether that's waiting for an audition, waiting for the result of an audition, waiting to hear back, waiting for the next one to come in. It's a really powerless place to be, waiting. And I'm starting to see, like, being in class now, this new class that I'm in, I'm seeing all these people just doing stuff. They're just making things. And people who are working too, some of them are, pretty consistently working actors, and some are series regulars, but they're just doing stuff. They're just making things. And, I've resisted it for a long time because I want to be the exception. I want it to just be successful at this one thing, and it's got to look like this. And the older I get and the more experience I get, I'm like, no, everybody who is successful is doing something as well. I don't mean like a side job or a part-time job. I'm like they're exploring other avenues, that they're either making their own films, or they're writing something, or some kind of other creative endeavor, or they just have other interest. And we've heard this for a long time. You have to make your own material, but I think I had heard it in the context years ago of like, if no one's putting you in a movie, make your own movie, and to get it's. But it was always, or some of
it was always like a back step, or
exactly, exactly, like a back avenue to get. Oh, it'll get you somewhere. But now I think you just have to do it, just to have a life. You know what I mean? Just to have something that interests you, and it takes all the pressure off this other thing.
And when you talk about Alan Rickman, 41, because I heard enough interviews that he had a very full life. He never felt like life was slipping by him.
I agree. And I was just thinking about what the catalyst for change is. And a lot of the time for me, unfortunately, or for better or worse, it's discomfort. When I get uncomfortable enough in a situation, I'm forced to change. Now, I think when I say I wanted to be exception rather than I wanted acting to kind of take off and save me. And I think, and you said ego, and I think that's right. A lot of it's ego. I don't want to, I want to be different. I want to just do this. I think underneath that ego is fear, because it's fear of like being judged for something, putting something out there in the world and people judging it, and I think that's what's kept me from some of it. And I've branched out more in the last few years into writing and other things, but I think fear kept me stuck for a long time with that. But I'm starting to be inspired more and more by people around me just doing stuff. At the studio now, we're working with a female filmmaker, an actor who's created this, wrote and created this short film for a streaming service, and they've given her a budget to make it into a feature, and it's a decent budget, and there's big producers on board, and she's gone through this process, and it's really inspirational to see that, just for your own sanity as much as anything else.
Funny, because we talked about this before, but I never thought about it in this way. I had to make that step when I decided to put things on YouTube, and some people suggested it to me, but I felt like it was beneath an actor. Realized when I first did it, I was absolutely horrified and scared, and everyone was very supportive. And I was like, oh my God, I was like this. I was not expecting this. My first video with no skills and no idea what I was doing, my sister sent it to her friends, and I was super embarrassed. And they're like, it looks like you're having a lot of fun. I almost had a breakdown because I was horrified. This good encouragement meant that I had to do it. I had to jump off that ledge and just give it a shot. The writing thing and people creating their projects, they all help each other. Writing actually helps you become a better actor. Directing helps you become a better actor. Acting helps directors be a better director. It's like, if you really care about your acting, maybe you should write and direct.
Yeah. And I heard something really helpful the other day from another actor. She was talking about, don't wait for someone to reach down and bring you up. Come up with your peers. Make stuff with your peers. Like, there's something brilliant. You see it in like a lot of filmmakers will like work with the same actors that they've always worked with. Like, Wes Anderson would be one, or like, people that have kind of just come up with. There's something beautiful about that, rather than, waiting for someone to kind of reach someone successful already to reach down and elevate you. Nothing is made in a vacuum. This is a ecosystem like the ocean. You know what I mean? Everybody needs everybody else.
All right, let's do hidden gems. I don't know. This really just came into my mind completely randomly, but I figured let's give some movie theaters some love. AMC just announced starting this summer, they're going to do half off Wednesdays. Basically, tickets are going to be half off on Wednesdays.
Love it.
Oh, everywhere. AMC nationwide. Starting on July 9th, Stubbs members can buy tickets for 50% off normal adult evening ticket price on Wednesdays. And if you don't know, they've always had $7 discounted Tuesdays. So Tuesdays at AMC have always been $7. You need their online membership that's free, but you just need to sign up for that. Also, if no one knows Canopy, Kanopy, with any local library card, you essentially get free membership to the app. And they have great movies, like Criterion movies. They have Oscar-winning movies. And it's just there, sitting on an app. So go for it, guys. Enjoy. And that's my hidden gem.
Nice hidden gem. All right, I'll take that. I'll take that to the bank. The my hidden gem for this week is a movie called Yellow Sky starring Gregory Peck. No, it's not. I
was gonna say. I was like, oh, okay, nice.
What is my hidden gem for this? Oh, you know what? This is what it is. I don't know how hidden this is, but I had never done it, and I've lived in LA for quite a while. But again, this might be something that people do all the time that I just have recently discovered. But I've been up to Griffith Observatory a number of times. I've been up there a bunch of times. I've been into the observatory. I've never done, there's a planetarium show in there, which they do every like hour or two. But it's like you go into the dome and they project this show onto the domed ceiling. It is incredible. It's $10. There's different ones, but I got motion sickness at the start because it's so realistic. Like you're flying through this was about the planets and the stars and our solar system. Oh my God, it's so well produced. I was expecting something a bit dated and cheesy. Not at all. It is brilliant. It's $10. I think it's like 45 minutes long. It is incredible. You're sitting on these seats kind of like angled backwards, so you're staring up at the ceiling. They have a guy that comes out, they have a host guy that kicks it off, who was it was brilliant. This older guy who was just a brilliant he was like a brilliant speaker, like kind of a quirky dude. But funny. The show
they put on a good show.
Yeah, the show was incredible. And I've never thought to go in there. I've always, the next show is at 1:45 and it's this. But I went in there last week and it was magic. So if you're awesome. Up that way, yeah.
I remember you guys mentioned it and I was like, oh my God, that sounds like a hidden gem. That's a great find.
I loved it, and I learned so much from it. I learned so much about the different moons and like water on planets and all kinds of things. It was incredible. Like it was really educational and entertaining.
I do want to throw this out there. If you're new to the show, hidden gems are a way we say thanks for listening to the end. We throw out a fun little gems or tidbits from our lives that we want more people to know. And I have to give you a shout out. My cousin is binging all of our shows. She's a big fan. My cousin Lee went a shout out. Not only that, she was so captivated by your Irish gluten-free oats bread. If you're watching this on video, I'm going to show a picture of her creation. Her first time came out really good. She enjoyed it.
Great. This
was a early hidden gem for us. Rian had a handmade Irish recipe of bread, and we have a fan who tried the recipe. So
nice.
There you go.
I got shit off a friend of mine. She's like, "How have you never had that before?" Because I only I only discovered it recently, and she was like, "How have you never heard of that before?" And I was like, "I don't know, but it's great."
Is that common though? I mean,
I don't know.
A lot of people don't really make their own bread. Like, I mean, I think it was hidden to me.
My mom makes it now exclusively. I mean, that's most of the bread at home in my parents' house is this oat bread, and it's magic. Because my mom can't eat gluten, so it's perfect.
Yep, nothing wrong with that, folks. All right, so that's our show. See you next week. Thanks for joining us.
See you next week, guys.
Well, that's our show, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it. If you get a chance, please leave a review. We're on YouTube. We're on Substack. We're on all social media at Actors Guide Podcast. See you next week.